You want to start with the latest that you just sent, Charlie?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, the subject this morning is prayer. And the most inspirational words I've ever read about describing how prayer works is from Ernest Holmes, which we're going to be reading this morning. And as each of you know, there's many different forms of prayer. And there's prayers of petition and asking for help and for God to do this and that and the other thing. And we're all familiar with those. There are some prayers that have taught us that we don't have to pray to something outside of ourselves, that there's God's within us, temple of God's within us. So anyway, the unification mantra is a form of prayer, but it's not petitioning anyone, it's recognizing the powers within us. It's a very effective prayer. So would somebody like to read the unification mantra? Or we all could read it. Why don't we all read it since it's on the screen? I'll begin. All souls
Souls are one,
and I
am one with them.
with them. I seek to love,
not hate.
I
I seek to serve,
not exact do service.
I seek to heal, not hurt. Let pain bring due reward of light
and
love.
let
the soul control
the outer form
and life
in all events,
and bring
to light the love
that underlies
the happenings of the times.
Let
Let
vision and
insight
insight
come.
Let
the
future
stand
stand
revealed.
Let inner
union demonstrate
and outer cleavages be
gone.
Let
love prevail. Let us all love.
Let us all love.
If you have any questions about anything regarding that, you ask them before we move on to the next subject, which is the article that Ernest Holmes, actually it was a lecture he gave. And this is the words we're going to cover. The prayer that gets results by Ernest Holmes. So on the unification mantra, is there anything that you'd like clarity?
No.
If not, let's move on to the next Science of Mind. I got this from the Science of Mind archives because Ernest Holmes passed away in the early 70s, but he made such an impact on the world. He was easily having audiences of 5,000 people in the 50s and 60s, anywhere he went. It made a lot of sense to a lot of people. So I'm going to ask participants to read what Ernest Holmes has to say. Or maybe somebody could read like 3 paragraphs and then somebody else. Would anybody like to volunteer to read the first part?
I am Charlie. It's Kareem.
Okay.
Thank you. The Prayer That Gets Results by Ernest Holmes. Throughout the ages, people have prayed, and you and I know that no sincere prayer was ever uttered without helping the one who gave it. We know that faith has done more than any other one thing to keep hope alive. We know that always in times of stress, people have turned to Source. But what we really want to know, something beyond this. We want to discover the secret of prayer as an effective force which actually can accomplish definite results. You and I are not too concerned about the particular method anyone uses because we know that all the different pathways of faith lead to one conclusion. And so we respect and have the deepest admiration for everyone's religion. But being curious and wanting to know a little more of the why and the wherefore, we cannot help being interested in trying to find out just what happens when someone actually does pray effectively. We want to know more about the prayer that gets results. Recently, I read an article in a popular magazine written by a minister who said that when he was a boy, his mother was very ill and in a hospital. She had tubercular kidneys, and the doctor who attended her told his father that there was nothing further that could be done through medical science.
You're doing a great job. Why don't you continue?
Okay, thank you. I love to read. Now this man was a very simple but a very sincere person with a deep spiritual conviction. He went to the bedside of his wife and knelt down and prayed. He sort of argued with Source, and in his prayer he told Source that he and his wife were eternally united, that the children needed her and he needed her, and that he didn't believe the time had come for her to leave this world. It was a simple prayer, uttered by a simple mind, and yet, as a result of this prayer, the miracle of life took place. The woman was actually healed. She was restored to her family and lived to rear them. It wasn't until years later that the mother told her son of this most remarkable prayer. She said that when her husband was praying, she felt a new surge of life sweeping through her, as though she were receiving an electric shock. Something seemed to stir in her physical being as well as in her mind. And when her husband rose from praying, he said to her calmly, but sincerely, that he knew his prayer was answered. He knew that she would be restored to perfect health, and she was. We can pass this incident off as where Source interfered on behalf of a certain man and performed a miracle for him. And we would be right enough in believing this because of the result. The woman actually was healed. But we shouldn't pass the matter off as loosely as this. It is a too superficial analysis. Neither should we think of it merely as one of those rare instances where divine power and the intelligence responded to this being in a way that it would not respond to someone else. In other words, while in prayer, the man argued with Source. We can hardly believe that the divine intelligence is moved to act because of human arguments. There is more to it than this. For no matter what method the husband used, he was not really arguing with Source. He was arguing with himself. And in that moment, through his argument, his own mind rose to a place of complete acceptance. It transcended the condition that confronted him. It rose above all the human limitations and accepted the simple fact that the Source he believed in would answer his prayer and restore the woman whom he loved to perfect health. We cannot believe that all the laws of nature, whether we think of them as mental, physical, or spiritual, instantly change to comply with this being's request. But we can believe something even more important, that in some way, during the prayer he uttered, a deep conviction came to him, a complete faith and confidence that his wife would be restored to normal health. And when we compare this man's prayer and its answer to the teaching of Jesus, we find that he was complying with the condition Jesus laid down as necessary to effective prayer, to the prayer that got results, as told to his followers, that when they prayed, they should believe that they had already received an answer to their prayer. Apparently, Jesus laid no restriction or limitation on faith other than this, that our prayers should be so formed that they comply with the nature of source. In other words, this divinity was not praying that it could influence people or cause them to do what it wanted them to do, for this would interfere with other people's rights. It wasn't praying that it should become a powerful figure among others. Rather, it got down to a deep, fundamental cause underlying everything. Source is life, and it was praying for more life. Source is love, and it was praying for a deeper love. Source is peace, and it was more completely entering into that peace. Divine wasn't praying that the whole nature and order of the universe would change to suit its ego and give it such a dynamic personality that it would paralyze everything it contacted. No, this being was humble, sincere, simple soul who merely said, Source, make perfect the life that you have given me. Restore my partner to health because I know everything is possible to you. When we analyze the prayers that have been answered, we always discover that they were answered in such degree as the one praying was praying aright, and in such degree as their prayer caused their own mind to come to a complete acceptance of power greater than they were, in the availability of a law of good, which is all powerful, and in the immediate response of a divine presence to their personal need. Nothing can be, okay, I'm done. Okay. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, you're doing
Oh,
good.
okay, I thought I heard, okay. Nothing can be more simple than this. And so far, nothing has ever proved more effective. Are your prayers and minds simple and direct? Are they deep with feeling? And above everything else in our prayers or our affirmative meditations, do we reach a place where we completely abandon ourselves to faith? For this must be the secret. You and I never concern ourselves with any arguments or controversies about whether or not we are right or wrong in our prayers. We do not have to go into abstract discussions about the nature of source. This is all right for philosophers and logicians, and I have no doubt that perfect logic and clear, straight thinking would lead us to share the same conclusions. But the divine intelligence is not moved by our intellectual attainments. The law of good never asks us what is our background. Rather, it comes softly and silently to the believing mind as though the great giver of life was merely waiting our acceptance, as though the law of good automatically moves in to fulfill the secret desire of the sincere soul and the secret ambitions of the simple heart. This is the starting point of effective prayer. We are not laboring with a source who is unwilling or a power that is reluctant. And in a certain sense, it seems to me, we are not trying to convince anything in the universe but ourselves. For certainly prayer is an act of the mind. It is a movement of our own thinking, our consciousness within ourselves. And so it doesn't seem strange to say that there are certain techniques for prayer. By a technique for prayer is meant that there are certain ways or methods for prayer that are more effective than others. For if what we really convince is our own minds, then the tools we use are thoughts, whether we choose to call them affirmations of the divine presence or denials of evil. The technique for effective prayer is something that convinces the one who is uttering the prayer. We could go into long arguments about this and project extensive and perhaps profound theories about it until we became lost in a maze of words and philosophies and perhaps theologies, but we would only be holding an intellectual argument with ourselves. The best way to approach the matter simply and directly and see what we can do to convince our own inner thoughts. If we can arrive at the assurance that when our thought is charged, something good will happen, We are on the right track. We shall have the courage to go on. If our prayers today do not reach a place of complete faith, we can know this. Every right affirmation we have made, every meditation of our heart and mind that tends to bring us to a more complete acceptance is storing up within us a growing sense of certainty that must and finally will overcome every obstruction. For you see, the obstructions are within us. They are not outside. If they were outside, we couldn't cope with them. But since they are within, and since they are thoughts, things of thought, we can handle them. Perhaps it would be well for us then to formulate a program which we know we can carry out, and for us to take definite time each day to get away from the pressure of the conditions around us and get quiet and become peaceful. And in the solitude of our own thought, quietly affirm the presence of the good we desire.
Wow, you could be a professional.
You are a professional.
I mean, as a reader, you're really good.
Yeah, we're
Oh,
gonna,
thank you. I enjoy it.
yeah, you're gonna have to become the reader for the Madonna and Faith
Yeah.
community.
Yeah,
There you
yeah.
go.
You've got a real gift for that. Yeah.
And
Thank you. Thank you for the compliment.
I'm glad you honored your gift.
Yeah, thank you.
So we can, let's have a discussion about this. Is there anything that popped out for anybody that they'd like to discuss? Okay, well, what I'd like to acknowledge was some months ago, we had a practitioner from Center for Spiritual Living who practiced this. And remember, she had a curvature to the spine since she was very young. And there wasn't anything in medicine that could help her or cure her. But she began to practice what Ernest Holmes was just saying. And she got to a point of inner knowing that there was no obstruction to her vertebrae. That her vertebrae was straight and functioning well as it was designed by the infinite power and presence of God. She got to a point where she realized that. That's the whole clue to this prayer, is the realization to move beyond appearances to an inner knowing, acceptance of the perfection of God in herself. And so it was amazing. And I can say for myself that I have practiced this technique or way of praying for over 4 decades. I don't think I'd be here today if I hadn't practiced it. It doesn't seem to always work the way you think it would, and I don't always have inner conviction. I get lost in the muddle of life. But when I can find that inner conviction that matches the divine intent for us to be whole, perfect, and complete, and I can accept that within myself or within others. And the beauty of it is we know so very little about the mind-body connection. But the more that we explore that, the more we can see that somewhere deep in our psyche, we have maybe brought this dilemma that we might be experiencing upon us. So if we have done that, then we also have brought the solution for it within ourselves. So it's our intent then to grow spiritually is to realize that we have this power within us. And it isn't an intellectual power. It isn't an egotistical power. It's an inner realization. It's a divine knowing that we synthesize what God has made in us as us. When we get to that realization, then it's like America. It's like, holy cow, who could believe that could happen? And we try to explain it, but it gets lost in intellectualism and duality. I'm sure I've explained this story to you, and I'll do it again. It's worth explaining. Bobby, in her lecturing circuit, has met a lot of different people. And one time she met this lady that lived in Irvine, California, Don Kuros. And I only met her once or something, but Bobby knew her through several meetings. And Bobby found out that Don was in the hospital. And Bobby was on her way to a lecture or something. She said, why don't we stop at the hospital? We go there early. And I'd like to see Don. So we stopped at the hospital, and they explained to us that we couldn't see her right now. She was in intensive care and being worked on. And if you're not a member of the family, you couldn't see her anyway. So as we're driving away from the hospital, Bobby said to me, Charlie, you ought to go back and see Don. You're a minister, and ministers are allowed, like family, they're allowed in the intensive care. And so sure enough, I took Bobby's advice and went back to the hospital after I dropped Bobby off and asked to see Don. And they went and brought me into her intensive care room, and she was blown up like a blimp, and she didn't look anything like the woman that I had previously met. And so they had to put on a gown and some plastic gloves. And I went in there with the nurse, and the Don, with all the paraphernalia and things stuck down her throat and breathing apparatuses and blown up like a balloon, was trying to say something to the nurse or to me. I couldn't understand what she was saying, but the nurse understood that she was asking the nurse if she could have a few minutes alone with me. And that's exactly what I had asked the nurse before I went in to see Don. I'd like to have a few minutes with you, with her. And so that's more than a coincidence. I don't know how it all comes about, but the nurse did leave. And the first thing I did was made the sign of the cross on her third eye. And I felt the energy flowing through me, and I said some words. I don't remember what they were now, but I knew Don was Catholic, and I knew Catholic prayers, but whatever words were spoken, it wasn't so much the words as the energy that was transpired. And the energy transpired into Dawn. She began to shake quite noticeably, and then she calmed down. And then I could understand what she was saying, because they had taken the thing out of her mouth. And she felt much better. And it was like a miracle. I didn't understand it at the moment, but it seemed that the doctor, when she went in for surgery, had accidentally cut into her liver or something, and the poison went through her system. So something reconciled that. And as I was taking off my gown and gloves, I noticed the imprint of my hand was burned into the glove, both gloves. I showed that to Don. I said, whoa, look at that. Because the transmission of energy was so powerful. But the affirmation that Don, when I later talked to Don, she knew she needed somebody to come to the hospital that would recognize her wellness, not her illness. And I was that person that came into that room and was able to recognize her wellness. And the coincidence that we're both asking for the same thing. So her prayer was answered, but she needed someone that could honor that prayer. And I was fortunate enough to be there to do that. But that's the power of prayer. So I'm sure each of you have some unique experiences with the power of prayer. And if I'd like to share any of those from our remaining minutes here, please do.
Well, I
For
want to,
me, oh, go ahead.
okay, I want to share a story which, you know, when you were talking, Charlie, and I don't know, but I really believe source spirit's always with me, and I'm being told to share this story because the reaction that I got from the Baptist church that I was going to when I shared this in Sunday school was like, you know, disbelief. But as a child, I don't do it anymore, but I love to run and I love to win. And I know it sounds, when I still was very hurt when the woman told me that, but I believed with all my might that, and I didn't do it every single race. I wasn't like racing, like, you know, where I was on a team. It was just playing with the kids out in the yard. But the one thing that I noticed was whether it was the same person or whether it was someone new or it was somebody that was better than me, and I would put it out there. As a child, I used to pretend that I was running to, because you have to remember, you know, raised Catholic, then switched to Baptist, this beautiful, you know, like godlike being, like what you would see in a Bible. And I remember just visualizing him in my head and saying, okay, I'm going to run as fast as I can, like I'm running to him, to be met with him and greeted with him, and I'm going to win. And I had that thing and could visualize him in my head. And I remember doing that. Whenever I did do that, I would, you know, win against the other kid. It was just on the playground. But I remember mentioning that in Sunday school, and the Sunday school teacher was so derogatory, you know, like, oh, da, da. But I really knew in my heart, because I really believed that that was going to happen. And I know that's not like I'm Mother Teresa, but you got to remember this is a 9-year-old kid. But at such a young age, I felt that if I truly believed, you know, and sometimes I feel now I need to capture that again. So thanks for letting me share that. I know it's just a 9-year-old's personality, but I was share it, you know. Thank you.
You're welcome. If you relate that to what Ernest Holmes was telling us, how would you relate it to what he was saying? That experience you had, how would you relate that to
Well, how I would relate it to is that I would relate it to is I really believed that in my heart and believed with my soul that if I visualized that, you know, God was over there, that I would win that race. So it was actually me, myself saying that to myself internally, I will win this race. So I think I've always felt that way with, you know, source spirit. You know, I just got involved in all this starting in like 2019, but I do remember my parents reading Ernest Holmes and watching him, you know, not seeing him, but I remember that. But you know, they kind of went away from it. But I think that if you really believe in something and trust in something, because I've had that before happen where I really believe that something's going to happen and trust in myself, whether it's healing or whether it's just something for me to do something, it's happened. So I think as a young kid at 9 years old, I realized it then.
Yeah, so, you know, in the New Thought movement, we would say that what you believe you can achieve.
Yes.
So, in regards to what Ernest Holmes was saying, faith creates the power of belief. When we have enough faith in the dynamics of outcome, like the Bible says, you can move mountains. So that type of thing. So I So that's another thing that you brought up is important, because when you share these dynamic moments with someone, you want to share them with someone that can accept what you're saying as truth for you. And the trouble is, when you share that with the teacher who couldn't believe it, when she put it down, it kind of, she's an authority figure, so you give her power, and you tend to lose some of that mojo. So when we do pray, if we do share our prayers with anyone, it should be like with a prayer buddy that is encouraging and not discouraging.
Yeah. And it was very hurtful too, because we were talking like we are now. It was actually in Sunday school, the Sunday school teacher. And, I've forgiven her. It doesn't affect me now, but it was in front of the whole class, the Sunday school class. And, a few of the kids laughed at me, and I'm like, okay, well, I know what I had that faith, but it was still, you're 9 years old, you want to fit in. But in my heart, I was like, no, it's right. I know it's right. But you're right. Even now you have to be careful with who you share those precious moments with.
Yeah. And that's one of the values of our coming together on Sundays, because we like to think we're open at the top. We're open and receptive to the power of prayer, the power of change, the dynamics of life, and the recognition that God is everywhere, and that means God's within us as us. And so when we reach kind of a point of knowing, or even a point of humility, humility means letting go of our false beliefs we cling to. That can't possibly be right, blah, 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 blah. So we all do that. But
I liked what you said, Charlie, when you were referring to seeing the wellness within her too, because to me, recognizing the positive and making that choice to be in the positive goes a long way in allowing us to have that energy come through us and actually be in that. And it reminds me of the words syntropy and entropy. And so I looked it up. Here's a little definition of entropy is leaning toward death, and syntropy is the tendency toward life. So when we minimize entropy, then the syntropy can take over, and we can be in that state of well-being at all times. And I think that's the belief that you were speaking of, Corrine. It's just believing that it can be good, right? In spite of the words.
I also, can I share another perspective?
Yeah.
So I would like to say that I always have control of my thoughts. That's not the case for me. That's why I need a power greater than me. And I have a teacher in another spiritual program. She says, I know everything's going to be okay as long as I don't choose or think I know what okay is. So I think there's also in prayer for me value in coming, I don't spend, the Bible is a book that I value greatly. And one of the quotes in there is, when I am weak, then you are strong. My power is made perfect in weakness. So coming in vulnerability, coming in surrender, coming in, I don't know what's best in this situation, but I know a power greater than me does. And believing in that, to me, is also incredibly powerful. And I have another teacher in a program. He always says, I can't choose my first thought, but I can choose my second thought. So if I'm attached to something, whatever I think it should be, or I want it to be, my next thought is, I bow to the mystery, I surrender, may I be of service. And sometimes I don't know what that is, what the health or wholeness of someone else might be. So that's another way that I come to prayer, in real vulnerability. And that seems to produce some real miraculous results as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I appreciate you bringing that up. The surrender is also part of what Ernest Holmes was talking about. Surrendering to get to a point where we feel helpless. the only choice is to surrender. And by surrender, we open up the portal to inspiration. And then the inspiration,
Absolutely.
we know what action we need to take. So surrender is definitely, in fact, in the 5 steps in this type of prayer program, 4th step is surrendering. Because, and surrendering doesn't mean, it means definitely letting it go, not being attached to the outcome. Being attached to the outcome is a problem. Because only it's like spirit knows what is the right outcome, and we don't. And unless we're really at one with spirit. If we're not totally at one with spirit, then spirit knows the outcome, and we don't have to know the outcome. We know the spirit or source knows exactly what needs to happen, and it does happen.
For me, prayer is, it's surrender, but it's also trust. It's like I pray when I'm dealing with my hospice people when they're imminent, but I never pray for a specific thing. I always pray for what's in their highest and best. And those are the 2 words that I use, that phrase all the time, because I trust in knowing that that power beyond me and more than myself knows what's best for that person. And it's a comfort for me when I pray, because I do pray a lot every day. It's just it's a comfort. I can't tell you. I don't know what I would do without prayer. I was brought up a Catholic. I researched religion for all these years, and here I am, bishop in an interfaith ministries, because that's what drew me. There's no judgment. It's just, yeah. So prayer is very important to me, and I think trust is important. And again, just praying for what's in their highest and best, because it's never our journey; it's always theirs, and we don't know, what each day brings. But I always trust that the man upstairs will guide me in knowing what I should do, and help me. And I'm always, given answers and guidance and help. So, yeah, prayer is very important.
So your faith is very strong, and you trust in something greater than yourself that you're one with. And
Right.
Yeah. And so then you, at some point, get the inspiration to take whatever the next step is for you. And that's pretty much the story of life. And all the success in life comes from within, right? We're moved to do something, to be of service in some way, and then we see a more enlightened way of doing something than it was previously done. And in one of the prayers we've learned in being a Christian is the Our Father. And then some years later, we found out there was a major error in that prayer, but everybody keeps repeating it the way it is. They're not aware of the error, and they don't care. So the error in the Lord's Prayer, through the Aramaic translation of George Lamza, who lived in the Aramaic world and spoke the language, knew all the idioms, and Jesus spoke in Aramaic. So when he read the Lord's Prayer, when you get to the part where it says, lead us not into temptation. Well, the God of love would not lead, and Jesus taught about God of love, so we can accept that God is love. He's not going to lead us into temptation. So the Aramaic version of that comes out to let us not enter into temptation, but us not into temptation. Because the loving God wouldn't lead us into temptation. So as we grow as spiritual beings, we can make corrections to the way we previously believed that no longer is our truth. So we surrender those untruths to God, and we reveal a higher truth. Anything else?
Well, just a little side. When I was told that I needed to have a cardiac catheterization, I balked, I fought, didn't want to believe, but I went. And when the doctor said, hate to tell you, you're not going home today, because if we send you home, we're never going to see you again. I got it. I got the message. And so when they transferred me to Yale, New Haven, I knew there was not a doubt in my mind that I was going to be fine, that this was going to be successful, because a long time ago, somebody told me, you got more work to do, girl, you're not done. And I kept hearing that in my head. And the nurses are like, well, aren't you afraid? Aren't you nervous? All my friends were like, oh, aren't you? No, I'm not. I'm going to be fine. I had a blast for 4 days in the hospital. Nobody could believe. I was the jolliest patient on the cardiac floor, because I
you
knew.
trusted.
I trusted completely that I was not going anywhere. Yeah, I knew it was going to be painful. I knew it was going to be some suffering, but hey, I'd been through that before in my life, so it was no big thing. But I just knew that I was going to be okay. And when my nurses came to visit me to the other floor post-operatively, they cried. They said, we can't believe how good you look. Nobody comes out of surgery looking pink in the face like you do. You know, my doctor called me his star, because I was the only surgery he had done that week that didn't have any complications whatsoever. I knew somebody was watching out over me, and I was going to be fine. And he had a lot of help. I find one of my guides. But so faith is, and I never thought of myself as a person with faith, but I just had absolute, complete faith that I was going to be okay. And even though this whole thing got delayed, it was spirit working, because the doctor I got to do my surgery was the best surgeon in Yale, New Haven. And he would not have been available 2 weeks before, when this was all supposed to happen. So spirit was definitely guiding everything, because they were right. I had work to do.
So
and it's not done yet.
The beauty in all that
Yay!
beauty, that's a great example of the inner realization of truth. You know, as much as the Bible has taught us, fear not. You know, all the time it's teaching us, fear not. So fear is dissipated by that inner knowing, by that faith that goes beyond the fear, whatever. And then later on, of course, Miracles and others, like they created attitudinal healing centers. And so the attitudinal healing center pretty much says the same thing: fear not, fear not. And we all fear, but when we turn to prayer or turn to an inner realization of something more powerful than fear, we're finding inner faith and trust in something greater than we are. But we're one with it. So if we come into that acknowledgement that it's real, that God is real, God lives with us, and God has nothing to fear. God fears nothing.
Paula, your story just reminds me of this. It keeps coming to me. Is, you know, you define we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and sometimes we're used to teach others through these experiences. And what you just told us is such a perfect example, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm. It reminds me of this story that I read a while back, a little short thing, and it was this about this guy who was in a flood and he was stuck on a roof and he was praying for God to save him. And so a guy in a boat came by and was like, "Hey, get in the boat. Let's go. I'll help you. Let's get out of here." And the guy's like, "No, God's gonna save me." And so the boat leaves. And so then like some fire department people come by like the next day and were like, "Hey, let us help you." And the guy's like, "No, God's gonna save me." And then he dies and he goes up to heaven and he's like, "God, why didn't you save me?" He's like, "I sent you a guy in a boat. I sent you fire department people. I was there. Why didn't you take it?" And it's like, Charlie's story about like going to the hospital and like, taking advantage that he's a minister and going in, and it's what she needed and he was called. And so it's like when we heed the call of what Spirit is sharing with us, we need to share, we need to step up and do. That's how that divine energy comes through us and like helps us support each other. And I love these
Thank you.
stories of everyone heeding that and like having that faith and coming through.
Yeah, that was beautifully said.
Yeah, Bobby used to use that story in her lectures all the time. And Paula, you realize that you have the best doctor there to help you and assist you. So you realize that. So it's helpful.
Divine intervention.
It's helpful to realize that God is omnipresent. So God is in all creation and all peoples and all animals and all environments. So
And that we don't let fear paralyze. We don't let fear paralyze.
yeah. So if you find God within yourself, then you become fearless, not in the egotistical sense of the word, but in aspirational.
Exactly.
Trusting.
Well, I noticed through the 50 years I was a nurse that the people who were filled with fear about what was going on never survived. The people who said, I can do this, they lived, they got through the disease or the surgery or whatever. And I had some people that actually enjoyed their illnesses and loved living in them. So I really think that influenced my thinking when I went in, because I've been sick on and off most of my life, so I was used to being the one that was sick in the family. But this was a big sickness. It was a big thing. And it could have scared me, but it didn't. It was just like, no.
Yeah.
I
You
have
had that
complete
faith.
faith. Yeah, I had complete faith. And
Yeah.
again,
And
Spirit, whatever you want to call it, was directing me. I mean, jokingly, I said, "Oh, that was my Uncle Dick who found him, because my Uncle Dick was a cardiologist and he was also a Yale man." So I'm sure he went and found Dr. V, whose name is this long and I can still not pronounce it. But Spirit, whatever I needed to believe in at the moment, I believed in, and I refused to be afraid, even though everybody around me was afraid. My husband was terrified that I would not come home. I was like, "No, I'll be home to bug you. Don't worry about it. I'll be okay."
There is such a difference too when in the medical field. I'm sure you'll agree, Paula. People that have a faith base versus people that have none. Like recovery. There's so much of their journey that I think faith is so important.
And
Makes a big difference for sure.
The other part of that faith is sometimes it's appropriate to make a transition.
Yeah.
People don't fear death because they have the faith of knowing that it's only a position. It's not the end.
Exactly. Yep.
Charlie, your prayer with the woman was a prayer of faith. You weren't running away from illness, you were running to good health. And prayer was one of the most powerful feathers in our quill in life, you know, and I'm always in a state of prayer as far as I'm concerned, and it's not because I'm special, it's just that I don't stop all day. And one thing that occurred to me yesterday when I read the title, and it was Imbolc and prayer, and you know, they combined Imbolc and prayer, it made me think that our prayers are like seeds. And back to the Imbolc acknowledgement, you know, our seeds, our prayers grow. And when we plant a seed, just recently, I had a friend who was very sick. I prayed for 2 years for her to be healed, and she got a new liver. But that took 2 years of almost daily, at least once a day, if not 3 times a day, wishing her good health. And it wasn't like to get away from something, but it was to go to something.
Right.
And that's the faith aspect of our intentions.
Yeah, you had the faith to continue, not to give up,
To go forward.
go forward. Exactly.
And Imbolc is the midpoint between winter solstice and spring. So we begin to see new life, but oftentimes death precedes new life. So it reminds us of the seasons.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's such a great word that you put up there, because the Madonna ministry, the Divine Mother, represents the womb of creation. That's what she represents. And so the thoughts of the that are empowered in the womb of creation is the power of belief. We put that seed in there. We get a divine, great idea to accomplish something. We put that in the seed, and we have the faith, and that grows, and the outcome then becomes more apparent. So Madonna ministry is a great, that word that you use, that Celtic word, is so perfect for us, because the divine womb is where everything happens, you know, but something divine has to be implemented, and we have to say that prayer that we know with a positive faith for an outcome, and that nurtures that seed that's in the divine womb of the universal mother. And that's how all creation exists.
Indeed.
I wanted to chime in earlier about faith, that faith doesn't always have to be in something mysterious that we can't see. You know, I know that a lot of people feel like that thing, but there's also kind of just this humanist view of like faith in other people, you know, and that we humans, somehow there's a divine plan and creation that we're here to support each other. And that's where these doctors and scientists get these like sparks of ideas to do these miraculous surgeries and all that kind of stuff. So having faith in just humankind as well, which can be helpful for some people to have something more tangible to have faith in. Just want to throw that in there.
Thank you, B. Absolutely. The faith in other people, faith in science, faith in medicine, knowing that we have the capability working together to solve these problems. Absolutely. To me, the act of focusing your mind is what makes these things happen. You know, like feng shui, for example, you're arranging your room where things are in the right quadrant. Okay, well, I've arranged my room to focus on creativity. Now my mind is focused on creativity. So it's such a powerful force we have right here. It's just incredible what we can do when we have the ability to focus it and to work together. So yes, I completely agree.
Intention.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody, and if we could all keep Laura in our prayers, I know that she would greatly appreciate them, and hoping to get her home today, if not today, tomorrow.
Awesome. Thanks for being there, Cindy.
Okay.
It all goes really
Take care.
well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And I
Thanks,
just
everybody.
got a message. I just
Next
got a
one.
message that Shirley is on her way to the hospital again. So
Oh.
send some prayers her way.
So let's use the power of prayer for Shirley. Use them for both. And who would like to say a prayer before we depart? For sure. And for Kevin. Oh, Lord.
I'm happy to. I've spoken a lot today.
Go ahead.
Mother, Father, God, Goddess, ancestors, all the divine energies and sources, we come to you in prayer, in both surrender and in both confidence that you have a desire for wholeness, whatever that means. And we bring all that we are and all that we are not to you now as we surrender and pray. How can we be of service to ourselves and all others in this moment and in this day, one day at a time? Blessed be. Gratitude.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you, Charlie, and everybody.
Do we have a topic for next week?
We don't yet. Anybody want to volunteer?
I'll have a topic for February 18th.
Okay. Put you
Because
down.
next week I'll be traveling.
Okay.
What about next week?
Flip a coin. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
We've had, Nikki, we've had a couple of people who volunteer teach, remember?
Yep. Yep. I can reach out to them and see if one of them are available.
Them and see if it's.
Okay. Will
If they're
do.
not available, then maybe something about like moving forward as we move into spring. Like, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
That's our backup.
Okay.
Gratitude is
right.
always appropriate for
Yeah.
a topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is true. All right.
Good, good.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful week.
Thank
Yeah.
you all for participating.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That was a really good story.
Yeah.
Bye.
Have a blessed week, everyone.
Take care,
Have a great
everybody.
week.
Bye.